time to go. Right now.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2023 science fiction thriller The Park. The film is directed and written by Charles Nagot and it stars Carly McIntyre and Carmina Garay. Now, this is a post-apocalyptic film that toys with the idea of what if all the adults in the world just died and just left the children. And that is the premise of this film. All the adults have passed away from some unknown virus, and the only thing that is left is the children. Now, once the children reach adolescence, then they will start to catch this virus and die themselves, or they'll turn into something else and then die, so to speak. So you see all this at the beginning in news clippings and, news reports and things like that, and then it kind of jumps forward a number of years. And it shows these two kids in particular, Rue and Bull, I think he's called. And they are out to survive, and they will do anything to survive, and that includes killing anybody that they come across to get hold of any supplies that they may need. However, they come across what looks like an abandoned theme park, and they see one survivor in there, a girl called Kwan. She outwits these two, takes them hostage, and then Rue and Kwan become very, very close, and then decide to kind of stay at the park. But the park is then descended upon by some adolescents who are about to turn. Right, what are my thoughts on The Park? Well, other than this having a really quite interesting premise, this is unfortunately one of those films that if you pull at the threads, it kind of falls apart. Because for me, the maths just doesn't add up, sort of thing. Because at the beginning, you see all these news clippings of, there's this unknown virus and all the adults and parents are dropping dead, and only the children are being left alive, sort of thing. And then it jumps to what looks like an apocalyptic future. Well, who's making these kids? It doesn't necessarily, I don't remember it anyway, given a time frame between, when all the parents are dead, or the adults are dead, to where our story kind of takes it up, some years following that. So the math doesn't make sense, because as soon as you hit adolescence, it tells you this film, you die. You're going to get this virus and you're going to die. Or as we learn later on in the film, there's these, I don't really want to call them mutants, but they're like adolescents that have essentially hit puberty, and they've contracted this virus, but it hasn't killed them. It's kind of mutated them, I suppose, but they're not zombies or anything like that, even though that's how you think it's going to go. It's not necessarily the case. So this film is playing around with an interesting premise, but for me, I just couldn't make the maths work. Did these kids survive on the streets from toddlers up until they get to the age they are in this film? They're just pre-teenage sort of thing. It just kind of doesn't add up for me, and I kept playing around with that in my mind, sort of thing. And if the parent or the adults just died a couple of years ago, well, these kids were 8 or 9 years old, something like that. Well, they wouldn't be living in a post-apocalyptic future. They could still live in relative luxury. You know what I mean? Not in an abandoned theme park. So it's one of those films that the more you think about it, the less sense it makes. But this film is also very, very clearly going for a Lord of the Flies approach here. And it doesn't really make any bones about it. And it's pretty predictable as well, as to where the film's heading by the end of it too, in regards to what these mutated adolescents are, and how the film is potentially going to turn out. And it is really devoid of any real tension or action or, real story, really. The vast majority of this film is these two girls bonding, like at this park. One of them's got a secret, like Rue has got a secret, and essentially Kwan's brother's been missing a while, but Rue has inside knowledge as to what's happened to her brother. So she's got this secret sort of thing, and the closer they get, the worse she feels about this secret. It just plays around with that for far too long. And you see them bonding, you see them kind of getting closer and closer and having fun at the park. And the added dimension of this Bull character, this other preteen boy that Rue was traveling with, they could have done far more with that character, and they didn't. It didn't really add to any of the tension. So the vast majority of them kind of in this park, messing about in this park, getting the electrics working, and then, the inevitable confrontation with these virus contracting teens later on in the film who have already contracted the virus, and for some reason they all wear blue overcoats, which doesn't make a lot of sense either. So I think there's not enough characters in this film either. The vast majority of it is just these two girls and this one boy for the majority of the film, apart from a couple of flashbacks here and there when we see what Rue has been through to kind of turn her into this hardened person. But it's devoid of any real interesting sequences. Far too much of the film is far too uninteresting for my liking. So what we're left here with is an interesting premise that is unfortunately not handled in the way that you would hope. I think there was potential here for this film. It doesn't feel overly threatening. It doesn't feel potentially overly violent. It's not gory. It's not scary. It kind of sits somewhere in the middle. And ultimately becomes a fairly dull affair. I will say, though, that the performances from all the kids on display here are of a very good standard, so it's not like it's torturous to watch or anything. It's just not overly interesting to watch, which is a little bit of a shame. So that's why I have scored it the way I have scored it. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the review. I hope you found it useful. I'll be back with more reviews and content on the channel very, very soon.